A new Star Wars journey begins in the place all good journeys begin. At, well, the beginning. This Star Wars Day, I'm excited to introduce the new Star Wars Canon Timeline podcast, where we will piece together the complete story of that galaxy far, far away in timeline order, from the dawn of the Jedi through the great unknown following the sequel trilogy. This is a podcast for both Star Wars superfans and complete newbies. Listen to the short intro episode now to hear how it works and what to expect over the coming weeks as we set the stage for the new television series The Acolyte, which we will be covering with weekly breakdowns. Subscribe to the Star Wars Canon Timeline podcast wherever you listen to take part in one of the most epic and expansive stories ever told, following all the twists and turns from start to finish. May the 4th be with you all month and beyond.
Welcome to the Sonic Screwcast, where the Lorehounds, your guides to all of Wales. I'm John.
And I'm Elysia, and this is our coverage of the BBC and Disney Plus series Doctor Who.
In this episode, we'll be discussing Season 1, Episode 5, titled 73 Yards.
And as much as we're enjoying letting you listen in on our conversations about the show, we would love to hear your thoughts as well. So please do send us an email at tardis@thelorehounds.com or visit our website at thelorehounds.com/contact. And there you can either use the contact form or leave us a voicemail, which we can drop right into the episode. And of course, we'd love for you to join our Discord server. We have a fun community. We're chatting about Doctor Who and a bunch of other shows and books and games and everything else.
Also, please consider supporting us on Supercast or Patreon for as little as $3 a month. You get ad-free episodes, show guides, much more. Subscribing is a great way to help us make more timey-wimey podcasts and afford to pay on our magic phones.
And of course, all those links are in the show notes below.
All right, Elysia, we're back with our weekly Who coverage that I bullied you into like the Welsh bullied Ruby.
Well, now I am very glad for it because I like this episode even better than Boom.
Yeah, this was really good. This was really, really good. I was watching it and it felt like we were right back in like the peak RTD era.
Right, exactly. Yeah, this is, I saw someone online called it like the most Torchwoody episode. I'm like, yes. See, that's the RTD influence is why I like Torchwood so much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, super good. So what were your thoughts on this episode overall? I know we're going to go right into spoilers. So if you've not watched the episode, please leave, watch it, and come back. Go 73 yards away. Sorry, go ahead.
Exactly. So, I mean, it was a bold choice to have no doctor for most of the episode, especially this new into like a new companion and a new doctor. But for me, that really worked because it just added to the growing feeling of dread and helplessness that was building throughout the episode. I love it. It's Welsh folk horror. So that's literally one of my favorite genres. And it feels like a bit of the anti-It Follows also, which is one of my favorite horror movies. So
I've seen that one. I saw that one in theaters when it came out.
And what do you think of it?
I liked it a lot. I thought it was a lot of fun.
They Follow comes out next year. I'm very excited.
Really? I got to make plans.
But this is like the anti version of that in a way, because in that it's still the creeping dread, but there you have someone relentlessly walking the same pace to catch up to you. And here it's, you can't confront what's following you because it's always 73 yards away.
Right. I like that a lot. It's an interesting concept to have something always near you. Semper distans.
Right, exactly. And have you ever watched the Davies show Years and Years?
No.
It's a limited series, and it's one that I think about all the time. I don't know. I watched it years and years ago. No, it's not that old. Like, I don't know, 5 to 10 years old. But it follows this family in the UK through years and years and covers all of these, like a mix of some technological points. Like there's someone who's a transhumanist, also other like immigration from a personal angle, and it's just kind of one of those shows that touches on everything with the full roller coaster of emotions. And this episode reminded me of that a lot. So I'd say anyone who liked this episode, check out Years and Years.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah, this was, making people get old to confront themselves
Mhm.
is definitely an RTD thing. I mean, see the 10th
Okay.
Doctor in the specials before he left.
Mhm.
Or was that the specials, or was that his penultimate season?
I don't remember. I don't remember what happened in what episode anymore. You've
I
watched more
know.
recently than I have.
I think it was the first Master run. It was the first,
Okay.
Saxon Master. All right. Yeah, I mean, I thought this was a great episode. At first, I watched it and I was like, wait, that's the ending? And I was a
Mm.
little disappointed. And then the more I thought about it, I was more into it. Then on second watch, because I showed my wife this episode, who is not
Okay.
at all a Whovian. She is
Mhm.
very, not like anti-Who, but certainly
No interest.
would not choose to watch it. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I was like, you got to watch this one because she loved It Follows. I was like, it's
Right.
kind of similar. Why don't you try
Okay.
this one? And she liked it. So this was, I don't know if it would be a good starter for anyone, but I think it
Mhm.
was a good starter for her.
I messaged my sister too because they watched the first episode so far, and I know why they haven't had time to catch up on stuff. But I was like, episode 5 is Welsh folk horror.
You've gotten the whole Elysia clan into Welsh folk.
Oh, well, I mean, because our interest in the Welsh side probably just comes from us. That's our mom's side of the family being Welsh.
Oh, okay.
And
All
then,
right.
but my sister and I just, I had a love of horror. I transferred that to her. We talk about it a lot. If anyone's interested in the Will Shift Dust breakdown of the fall of the House of Usher.
Mm-hmm.
But so I transferred that love of horror to her, and yeah, obviously this genre fits in with our identities as sisters.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Shall we get into the full episode?
Yes.
Here's a synopsis. The Doctor and Ruby land on the coast of Wales, where the Doctor breaks a fairy circle and disappears. An old woman begins whispering and signing something at Ruby from a distance. No matter where Ruby goes, she follows. Ruby makes her way to a local pub where she's bullied by the Welsh. She sees that every time somebody talks to the woman, they look at Ruby and run in fear. Ruby returns home to her mom, who tries to talk to the woman for her, but runs away in fear and disowns Ruby. Kate Lethbridge Stewart offers her help, but her whole team abandons Ruby when they approach the woman. Ruby then sees Roger Ap Gwilliam campaigning for prime minister and remembers the Doctor calling him the most dangerous prime minister in history. She volunteers for his campaign and uses the Semper Distance woman to make William run away before he can launch his recently acquired nuclear weapons. 40 years later, at the end of her life, Ruby is in a care home trying to sleep when the strange woman begins to come closer. Ruby flashes through time and finds herself as the older woman, warning the Doctor and her young self not to step. Young Ruby stops the Doctor from breaking the circle, and the Doctor avoids being taken away.
So, yeah, I thought it was very interesting that they also literally point out in this that the cliff tops are a boundary between land and sea, and then say word for word, a liminal space where rules are suspended, which reminded me a whole lot of that 60th anniversary special at the Edge of Space.
Mm-hmm. Also, I just want to sit down and have lunch with that woman who's
Wait, which one?
inventing words and
Semper Distance.
talking about the liminal spaces.
Mhm.
I feel like you just say something to her and she'll come out with something genius.
Listen, the Welsh are a lyrical people. It's in the blood.
And the blood is everywhere, according to them. You know
Hmm.
why we have so many castles?
Yeah, torture.
Man, they got me with the magic phone bit. I gotta say that.
Hmm.
I was like, oh, is she in the 80s or
Yeah, I didn't
something?
know what year it was. So I was like this, but I understand it's a bit insulting if it is, 2024 or whatever.
Right. That sparked some debate in our Discord if the
Yeah.
Welsh were too mean. I saw this comment on Reddit that made me laugh that said, a bunch of people just asking you why would you do that is very Welsh. It was a really
Yeah.
fun pub scene, though. I really love the
Yeah.
way
I love
that
the
they
characters.
introduce the magic with some
Hmm.
levity. Like they really like get you sucked into, and you're like, oh, this is going to be really camp and really, like
It was
explicitly
scary.
magic.
Yeah.
And then when they're messing with her, I'm like, oh, that was a really good way to sort of tease the magic, but not make me
Right.
take it too seriously.
Right. Exactly. And we have to point out that the hiker she meets on the way is now the most explicit meeting she's had with Susan Twist, and she asks her because now she saw her directly, in the last episode as the AI in the ambulance, and now she asks her, "Have I met you before?" So we are seeing this whatever being Susan Twist is playing coming more and more to the foreground. But do you think the hiker knows that she's all these different people, or do you think there's something
I
else at
don't
play?
know. I don't know if it's that or if it's like a Clara situation where she's like in these different timelines.
Right. Exactly. That's what I'm wondering. If she's like split or something.
So Susan Twist is not Mrs. Flood, right?
No. So we also got Mrs. Flood, and it seemed like she only shows up for a second to nag and doesn't say anything else that intriguing. So it feels like they're just reminding us that she's there and they're seeding that for later. But it feels like the Susan Twist thing they're putting forward more in the forefront.
Well, there
But
was a theory for a while that Mrs. Flood was older Ruby, and I think that can be put to bed now because we know what Ruby looks
yeah,
like old.
right. That's true. Good point.
Yeah, I
Did
think
you
that's it.
notice? Did you notice at one point they were showing a transition with Ruby playing with her ear? I haven't really noticed that before. I don't know if she's been doing that all along, but I'm going to be paying attention if there is a reason why they kind of zoomed in on that, or if that was just used for the sake of transition.
I didn't notice that, but I see what you're saying there, and that's interesting if there's something there.
Yeah.
What do you think about the return of Kate Lethbridge Stewart?
Yeah, it was. So we got units explained for the newbies, and
Mm-hmm.
that's good. But also, just this escalating thing where, like, first her mom runs away, and then so like home isn't even safe, and then you see when Kate Lethbridge Stewart shows up, we're like, oh, units here, oh, thank God, and then they all run away too, and it's just the building dread. But I also have to shout out that it's funny that also this week I can't help but draw parallels with what else I'm watching. But in Interview with the Vampire, they introduced a prominent similar organization there called the Talamasca.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah,
That's funny. You know
and
what's
also
funny?
yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, did you notice Kate Lethbridge Stewart had red nails, which I saw side by side images from this episode and from the 60th anniversary when a red nailed hand picks up a golden tooth with the
Ooh,
so,
interesting.
mm-hmm.
The master might rear his ugly head again.
Yeah. Seems
Also,
inevitable.
can we just say, with Roger Ap Gwilliam being referred to as the most dangerous prime minister in history, I'm just looking at Harold Saxon going, do I mean nothing to you?
Yeah, and I also wonder, like, well, first of all, just have to shout out that the actor playing him was Anurin Barnard, who I think you watched 1899, right?
I did not.
Oh, you did not. Okay, sorry.
Hmm.
But he was one of the main characters in there, so I had recognized him from that. I'm a fan of his. But
Nice.
so I wondered if the doctor, because the doctor brought him up at the beginning before he disappeared, but then that was all in this whole alternate timeline. So how did the doctor remember him in the beginning? Does he still exist after that? Could we have an overlapping time loop situation a la Dark?
Hmm. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if that ever happens that Ruby stops this guy. So maybe they'll have to stop him again later.
Interesting. Yeah.
Or maybe he was stopped a different way in the main timeline.
Yeah.
Who knows? We might just let
Especially
this
with
go.
an actor like that, it would be nice to use it more than once.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, by the way, I realized that we're trying to do this podcast for new and old Whovians. So
Hmm.
Harold Saxon, what I referred to there, is a character that was really the Master, which is this adversary of the Doctor, stemming all the way from the classic series and through New Who. And basically the Master pretended to be human and became the Prime Minister of Britain and did a lot of bad stuff. Did like a whole lot of bad stuff. So that's why I'm making the joke of, do I mean nothing to you?
And also to elaborate on what I said, the master was last referred to in the 60th anniversary special when the toy maker, who we talked about with the Maestro episode, the toy maker said that he had the master in his gold tooth. And then after the toy maker was taken care of, a gold tooth was on the ground and a red fingernailed hand picked it up.
Mm. Do
Well,
you think that if it was Kate, do you think that she wanted the master as like a surety against the doctor in case the doctor goes rogue?
I don't know. Does Kate play like that?
I don't know.
I mean, would Kate be the some type of person to unleash a bad guy to stop? I don't know. It could be, I mean, I could see on the one hand, she's like, well, let's just, for safekeeping, let's pick this up. And
Hmm.
then maybe later, yeah, there is something that makes her feel like she has to force her hand.
I'm calling it. We're getting a Suicide Squad spinoff led by Kate Lethbridge Stewart. Yeah. By the way, I've been binging Classic Who. I finished the second Doctor's era, and I'm into the third
Hmm.
now. And Kate's dad is a cool dude. He's all over the place. I mean, especially the third Doctor. The Doctor is exiled on Earth and just gets a job at UNIT,
Yeah,
and that's just the whole thing. And I think that's what people were hoping with David Tennant, being hanging
right.
out with Donna, but being a consultant for UNIT.
I mean, he could show up eventually like that, but I agree with the people who say there should be some time to let Shooty Gatwad really inhabit the role more.
Oh, I agree. Can I ask you though, even if it's off screen, why didn't Kate reach out to 14 to help with the missing doctor situation?
Um, why? Yeah, that's a good question. Maybe in this version he doesn't exist, or I don't know, or maybe she. I mean, maybe she went to Ruby first, and then immediately it was like, okay, step one, let's confront the woman, and then whatever the woman said, it seems like whenever the woman speaks to someone, they just drop the whole thing forever.
Yeah, but also she is asked by Ruby, like, how does the world get on without the doctor? And Kate replies, well, that's classified. Is she referring to 14 there, or is she referring to something else?
Oh, yeah, that could be. Good point. That could be.
Also, somebody made a great joke on Reddit. They said, when it's how does the world get on without the doctor, Kate turns to the camera and says, for $24.99, you can get the big finish audio of me and the rest of UNIT saving the world.
Yeah. I love, actually. There's been some good Doctor Who audio dramas, so I'm
Oh,
all
I
for
agree.
it.
I'm currently going through the
Yeah.
Ninth Doctor ones.
Okay. Oh, cool, cool.
They
Um.
got Christopher back. They got Eccleston back
Oh,
for that.
yeah, yeah. I did hear that. I haven't listened to those. I need to. I need to go back and at least rewatch the Ninth Era because I feel like I lacked a proper appreciation that, in retrospect, I think is due.
Yeah, I like 9 better now than I did before, for
Hmm.
sure. I like him better than the first Doctor, that's for sure.
Okay. Yeah. Fair.
All
Um.
right. What else
I
we got here? Go ahead.
Well, so okay, so I have questions about the future. First of all, this is maybe just a random world building timeline thing, but so um, when Roger is saying, he says the app in my name means that that I'm the son of Wales. It's not like the apps you used to have in your phone in the old days. And first, I groaned at that, and then I was like, wait a minute, apps are gone. There's no more apps in this world.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's weird because it does seem like she's using something on her phone to measure distance,
Mm-hmm.
but they don't call them apps anymore. I
Yeah,
don't know.
good question. Yeah,
That seems like one of those silly science fiction things where you're just like, "Oh, we don't do that anymore."
yeah.
But I don't think that's plausible. I think that we will still have apps. We'll just
Maybe they call something else.
yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't know. Yeah. I do like though how the Marty character was handled. That was very subtly done. Where it seems like she probably experienced a sexual assault from him.
I
From
was going
Rod.
to ask you about that. Like what
Yeah.
was the deal with her in general? And I guess
Yeah.
that's why Ruby's apologizing to her like I couldn't save you.
Right. I didn't do it soon enough because Ruby was, as soon as he's like, oh, who's that over there? Ruby was kind of, you could tell her red flag was, going
Hmm.
up.
But so my question is, why did Ruby have to wait?
So that maybe this ties in. I think it's possible we learn later what the woman was saying to the people, to who came up and talked to her and ran away. But maybe Ruby needed to be alone to figure it out.
Hmm. But
I
she
did
was
love,
alone for years, for like 15 years before that, right?
yeah, well, yeah, for a long time. I did love how and I don't know why it continued after that, the woman there the whole time. I guess to make that connection to for her to jump back in the past. But I love an alternate timeline story, and this one I thought
Hmm.
did it well. And I love the fact that Ruby can never directly confront what's chasing her because it's always 73 yards away, so she can never get
Hmm.
closer. She just has to like live with it until she. I don't know why on her deathbed she makes that jump. Did you expect the woman to be Ruby?
I kind of did think at a certain point, I was like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, that's old Ruby warning her. I really did. I like halfway through the episode, I was like, I think that's just her. Uh,
Yeah, I did too, but then I wondered if it could be her mom also, and then now I have, like, new theories brewing.
yeah, yeah, yeah. But I don't know. Damon Targaryen sure was harassing Ruby a lot during this episode. But yeah, I don't understand why she needed to wait. And I also don't think that um I don't think that the specter of Ruby, old Ruby, was meant to get rid of Gwilliam. I think that
Mm,
was just something that Ruby did with it.
right, because
I
then otherwise why stick around after that?
Right. I think that this was just her warning her through her whole life. You're not supposed to be in this timeline.
Right. But there's also so she's doing sign language the whole time. So
Hmm.
I don't speak British Sign Language, but I could tell that she was saying something about love. So I had to look it up, and apparently the official translations from on ITV they have this Doctor Who Unleashed after show, and they said the translation is "Bless you, thank you so much. That's so kind of you. When you gave me that little thing, it was just so precious. How am I ever going to repay you? But we will think of something." And then starting over from bless you, thank you so much, et cetera, et cetera.
I guess to the doctor.
But it seemed to be to Ruby because she's signing it to Ruby the whole time.
Oh, okay.
So then I'm like, what if Ruby's her own mother? But I don't know. I just, yeah, there seems to be something. And then, so the other thing is this 73 yards thing. So I had to
Hmm.
look up, like, what could 73, why specifically that number? And something I found really interesting is that so when you amateur ham radio users, they
Hmm.
apparently sign off by saying 73 and they translate that as saying that means best regards. But where it actually
Hmm.
comes from is that the telegraphers, like they in the early days, they were sending messages so much they didn't want to be repetitive. So they started substituting numbers to mean different things. And they actually, in 1857, they published a code, an National Telegraphic Review Operator's Guide that codified these numbers and what they mean. And 73 literally meant then, my love to you.
Huh. I like that a lot. That's cool. I wonder if that had to be intentional, right? Like 73 is
Yeah.
so specific.
Yeah, and apparently Davies was like measuring out literally 73 yards for it seemed like an important number to him behind the scenes.
That feels obnoxious for the actors. Like, how am I
Well,
going to
I
tell?
mean,
That just
yeah.
feels obnoxious. I'm so sorry, older Ruby, or whoever was the stand-in. I don't know if it was the
The
actor
same
for
actress?
older Ruby,
Yeah.
but it was because we just can't photograph her face. It's crazy.
Yeah. Oh, creeping dread.
Yeah, I don't love faceless things. Remember the whole Slender Man thing?
Mhm.
That was
Yeah.
a whole thing. That was a whole thing. When I was in high school, somebody sent me like videos on that, and that freaked me out.
Yep. Well, what did you think about they called attention to the snow again? Like when she's in this alternate timeline, she's like, I used to be able to call up snow. And like, that's nice, dotty old lady.
I know. I
Um,
loved that. I love that.
but
But
there's,
she's all with it too, right? Like I think the older Ruby is still very much with
yeah,
it.
oh,
Like
yeah.
she's like, yeah, they don't believe me, and I don't feel like putting in the effort to explain.
Yeah.
So whatever.
Yeah, because right before that was the thing of the lights. She's like, lights worked the same when I was a kid.
Which is kind of funny because she's the one who goes, "Do you take,
Right,
do you take Apple Pay?"
right. Goes to show you.
Which honestly, I think they reacted too harshly to that. A lot of places don't take Apple Pay.
Yeah. No, I think they just decided to have some fun with this girl. Maybe they judged her the moment she walked in and she's like barely dressed with short shorts and stuff.
Hmm. Yeah, I think so too. Although I'll say England is very Apple Pay. Like the
Yeah. Well,
UK is very
but
happy
maybe
with
that's,
mobile pay.
yeah, but that's the thing. This is Wales and they're used to the English coming in and being like, oh, you think we don't have technology and we're all
Right,
witches,
right.
right?
I mean, in fairness, you got candles out. Like what are you gonna do?
It's
What are you gonna do?
atmospheric. Yeah.
Fair enough. Fair enough. I don't know. Some of those guys, like that seemed like such a mismatch group of people.
Mm-hmm.
You had like the punks,
Mm-hmm.
you had the older man who's like, blue collar coded.
Right.
You have, this old woman who's like a philosopher.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a
You have the
small town,
bartender.
one place to hang out.
It's just funny. Like that's just so many different people in one room.
Yeah. I wonder if like the young kids, one of them could have been somebody's grandkids who are there, just it's just a small town and where do you go?
Yeah. So the Mad Jack thing, I want to talk about that too. What was that? Because, you have the whole thing with William later saying, oh, well, they called me Mad Jack. But was that connected to the letters and how?
I mean, somehow it seems to be, but does this in any way, this whole affecting us permanent, barely noticeable change in reality, does it in any way tie to, for instance, what we see with the fact they use mavity instead of gravity because of what happened in the
Hmm.
60th special?
Right.
And if listeners who haven't watched the 60th special are starting to get the feeling they should, then yeah, go for it. Yeah. I think
It's
there's some
3 episodes. You can do it. I
mhm.
believe in you.
There's some good groundwork laid that I think is going to be coming back, like
Yeah,
who
they're also just a
Maestro's dad
delight.
is. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's a good episode. This episode, I it makes me think so hard about things.
Yeah. And I think it's two cases. So yeah, my favorite episodes are the ones that you have to think about for a little while after to make sense. But then also I wonder how the episodes that follow the rest of the season might change our perception of this episode or answer some questions we have lingering.
Hmm. And we're also building the same theme of magic through the season. You have
Right.
Kate Lethbridge Stewart saying things are turning more supernatural these days.
Mhm.
And that's
Yeah,
different. And
that's
she
true.
mentions that they're wearing salt, right?
Oh, I missed that. Okay.
Yes, but when she's trying to say like, oh, the woman's not going to be able to affect us, she's like, oh, we have psychic
Oh,
training, we're
right.
wearing salt
Okay.
necklaces or something like that.
Mhm.
So yeah, it's definitely like whatever the 14th Doctor did on the edge of the universe definitely messed some stuff up.
Yeah. I feel like the answer of what the woman was saying to people to get them to run away, that answer must still be coming because it's too big of a question to not address.
Yeah, I agree with that. Um, the other thing is, I really do think, and I think I mentioned this last podcast, but I think that we are building to this idea that without the Time Lords alive at all, because before they were hidden away, but they were still around.
Mhm.
Without the Time Lords around, kind of guarding what you think of as the sacred timeline in MCU terms, a lot of weird stuff is coming in,
Yeah.
and
Yes.
magic is real again.
Right. It's all like that whole idea they keep repeating of, there being a sort of demon circle and somebody smudged the salt and it's just letting
Uh huh.
stuff through. Like, yeah, that again now from the water to the land on the liminal cliffside. Yeah. There's
Right.
definitely a recurring theme. And the question
Right.
is obviously we know the Pantheon, Maestro and Toy Master. That's something that was let through, but Is everything else linked to them, or are there other entities or forces at play?
I don't know. There's also, I wonder if we're going to have any more rogue Time Lords. I mean, maybe I'm just
Yes,
thinking in
please.
classic Who terms because I've been watching classic
Ronnie,
Who and I've already met.
Ronnie.
Yeah, yeah. Well, the Ronnie doesn't show up till the Seventh Doctor,
Mm,
but I've already met the monk and the war chief as far as
okay.
rogue Time Lords, and I'm like, man, are we gonna get the Master? Are we gonna get? Are we gonna get the monk at some point? I don't know if the monk dies in classic Who, but the point is, there's plenty of other rogue Time Lords around
And does a
that the
Time Lord
Doctor could
ever
run
really
into.
die? How many times has
Right,
the Master died?
right, right. Well, we did see zombified cyber Time Lords in the
Mm.
13th Doctor's era. I'm still mad at Chibnall for destroying Gallifrey. I really am. I think that it was so silly to destroy it right after it came back.
Yeah, I mean, but again, with Doctor Who, that doesn't mean it stays destroyed because maybe there's still because it wasn't Gallifrey previously in another dimension in a painting, so you can always have
Hmm.
something crazy like that going on,
Yeah, it was like time locked twice, I think,
right?
which is wacky. But
And
I mean,
Gallifrey being the planet that Time Lords are from, like Doctor Who.
yeah, yeah. I'm a little like, how many times can you bring it back before it becomes silly? You know?
Yeah. Yeah, it was silly to just destroy it because it would be interesting to explore it.
I think they just didn't let it breathe enough. Like
Mhm.
Chibnall did not let Gallifrey breathe enough.
Right.
You just had Moffat bring it back, and
Right.
then he's like, okay, it's gone now.
Yes, I agree because then the new people who don't even know why they should feel attached to it, except for the fact that it's the Doctor's planet, of course.
Yeah. At the same time, maybe they just, maybe he's on the phone with RTD and RTD's like, look, the first time it really helped to not have to explain all the Gallifrey and alien stuff.
Yeah.
So if you could just take care of Gallifrey for me so that I can onboard new people when we reset with Disney, that would be great.
I mean, but it's not like that difficult to explain. The Doctor can just say, "I'm from a planet called Gallifrey," and then
And they have terrible hats.
dribble out, yeah, and then dribble out explanations of it as the episodes go on.
That's true. That's true. One other thing I want to talk about is the fear of abandonment and how that really
Hmm.
drives this episode.
Yes, and it's like she had to embrace that fear in order
Hmm.
to get through it and achieve her purpose to warn the Doctor,
Right.
basically, not to step on the fairy circle.
Everyone's abandoned me my whole life, but I haven't been alone in 65 years.
Because she always had herself.
Right. Right. It's almost like that classic advice, like love yourself before you can love somebody else. But it is true in a sense. Like you do need to learn to sit with yourself to have a healthy outlook, I think.
Yeah, I agree.
And I do like how as time goes on, she stops fearing the mysterious Simper Distance woman and she
Hmm.
starts just like looking at her lovingly, like, oh, my
Yeah,
friend's still here.
right. Well, I can imagine. Yeah, at that point, you for how many decades you have this entity always there with you. It's a constant. It's a comfort.
Right. Until of course it gets onto your bed.
Right.
So to me, that meant like it was becoming part of her, right? Like, is that
Right.
what you read it as?
Well, so that is the question: is was it always Ruby, or did that change somehow with this merging? Like, was it, and could it be like Ruby's? Could it be that Ruby's people are whatever this entity was, and maybe from another dimension,
Mm.
from where the pantheon comes from, or whatever is leaking in from the outside now?
It's a good question. I also think Ruby clearly has a human anatomy
Mm.
because
Yeah,
otherwise somebody's going to catch that by the time
boom, they would have
she's
caught it. Yeah.
elderly. Yeah. Yeah, if she had two hearts, like I'm just watching the first time they introduced the two hearts business
Mm-hmm.
with the third doctor, like he's in the hospital unconscious after his regeneration. They're like, what is going on with this body?
Mm-mm.
And yeah, I just think they would have noticed that or different blood types and things like that.
Right.
But I
We
guess
yeah
not.
we got confirmation basically last episode that she's human.
Yeah. Yeah, and the aging. I mean, I guess we didn't see her die and possibly regenerate, but also there is this theory that I agree with, that a Time Lord needs to know that they have a regeneration coming and
Oh,
activate it to
okay.
do it. Like you don't
Hmm.
automatically do it. You have to kind of trigger it.
Okay.
Because you think of 11. 11 probably had regenerations left because of the Timeless Child business.
Hmm.
And 11 not knowing that he had more regenerations left let him age and almost die.
Yeah. So I have a question. They haven't explained the regeneration thing to new people yet, right?
Well, yeah. If you haven't watched the 60th, then yeah,
Hmm.
you've only, and even if you did, you only had a weird regeneration.
Right. That's not the usual way it goes.
Would you like to explain it?
Well, sure. It's just basically the doctor. This is obviously behind the scenes, just a way to keep the show going when they have to recast the doctor,
Hmm.
which they do every few seasons now. But the idea is that Time Lords, they, instead of actually dying, they just regenerate into a new person. So they hold the memories of the old. Of the old forms that they had in the most case, with some exceptions we won't get into now. But they become a new person with a new personality and new physical appearance.
Yeah, and this really was band-aided on when William Hartnell, the first Doctor, had health
Mm.
issues, and they still wanted the show to keep going on. So they were like, okay, the Doctor now looks like Patrick Troughton.
And apparently John likes him a lot more now.
Oh, I love Patrick Troughton. I think
Yeah.
he's like maybe one of my top 3 Doctors now.
So him, Tennant, and Smith.
I think so. I think so.
Okay.
And I think Smith might be edging out
Ooh.
Tennant. The more I think about it, the more I'm like, I actually really like
Yeah.
Smith's portrayal.
I
But
think I think that Shuti has the Gatwa has the he could become my favorite. Let's see where this goes.
yeah, I haven't seen enough of him to make a judgment
Yeah.
call yet. Like I like him, but I just don't know
Hmm.
where he's gonna go.
But otherwise it's Smith for me, yeah.
Yeah.
With Tennant closely thereafter.
They're both so good. And they're both
Hmm.
different flavors, right? You have the
Right.
Time Lord Supreme and you have Mr. Goofy.
I like
It
Mr. Goofy.
yeah. I think that Smith and I think that Shooty is starting to do this, especially last episode in Boom. Smith is really great at capturing like the duality of the deep sadness plus, laughing through life.
Right. Right. And I think, yeah, Shooty Got was doing that also. I also loved that we got, so older watchers will know of a character called River Song, whose most famous quote is spoilers. So
Hmm.
this episode, when he said, oops, spoilers, that felt like him remembering her.
Yeah. Yeah. River's great.
Hmm. I wouldn't mind having her back again. Because, with
Yeah,
the
timey wimey it.
timey-wiminess. Yeah.
Yep. Bring her back. Doesn't matter. That's that guys, if you're new to Doctor Who, we can make anything happen. Like anything can
Right.
happen because the rules can always change. The sonic screwdriver does anything you need it to do in that moment. So does the
Hmm.
TARDIS. So do the timelines. Sometimes you can go to a parallel universe and it'll break everything. Sometimes you can go there and it's fine. Whatever you want. Whatever you
Yeah.
want that the writer wants to do in that moment. As long
Right. That's not what
as
the
long as
show's
it's
about.
internally
Yeah.
consistent in that episode.
Right. It's about taking these ridiculous situations to explore like fundamental human truths.
Right. And that's what I love about it. We have
Hmm.
a great time. So, you ready for feedback?
Yeah, let's do it.
We got a couple. Faye wrote in an essay. Would you like to start reading it?
Sure. Um,
Oh, and
okay.
and before you do, I should mention
Hmm.
you can also send feedback like Faye did
Yes.
by writing into TARDIS at thelorehounds.com, going to thelorehounds.com and clicking on the contact page, or tagging us on Discord and telling us, hey, I want this in the feedback.
Yes. Please do. Um, okay, so Faye wrote, my name is Faye, she, her. I've listened to the Lorehounds podcast since the first podcast on the Rings of Power. So, yay, another original. And I'm really excited.
Huzzah.
Huzzah. And I'm really excited that Alicia's joined as a regular Lorehounds podcast. Welcome. Thank you, Faye.
Yay.
Um, This is my first time writing in. I'm not usually a big fan of RTD. I think the Space Babies episode is about the worst Doctor Who episode I've ever seen. It's not my favorite either.
Yeah.
So I'm surprised to say that my email is actually in defense of an RTD episode on Doctor Who. The episode, but not really RTD's writing style. Okay. I've seen and heard quite a bit of feedback about this episode online, saying it's confusing, makes no sense, and the ending isn't satisfying because it leaves so many unanswered questions. I don't disagree, but I think that this time it actually just works within the genre that the episode seems to be using. It's pretty much agreed upon that each episode this season is taking on a distinct genre of storytelling. If so, this one is a supernatural folk fairy tale. This is one of my favorite genres, so I was already primed to like this episode, but it seems that a lot of Doctor Who fans aren't quite sure what to make of it. Um, in this genre, there's usually quote unquote fey magic or supernatural occurrences, which are by their nature unexplained. No one asks how the fairies steal children and put a changeling in its place, how fairies can disguise themselves as animals or other people or put curses on people, such as speaking only riddles or never being able to find their livestock, etc. There isn't a question of how in these stories because it's just fairy magic and the story carries on. So, yeah, just pausing here. I am also hugely into folklore, particularly Northern European folklore, which obviously is where all this fairy stuff comes from. And yes, I completely agree. And this is why one of the reasons why this episode worked for me. What do you think, Shum?
I agree with that. And I understand some of the backlash to having magic in Doctor Who. At the same time, magic has absolutely always been a part of Doctor Who, whether you call it
Right.
that or not, because they, like we just said, like there's no
Mm-hmm.
rules to this universe. There's
Mm-hmm.
like very loose rules of don't have bad paradoxes, but then when they need a paradox, so they do it anyway. So I don't know. I think it's totally fine. And I think it's exciting to see them go into a new area because, again, this would be season 40 if you never started renumbering.
Right.
And a lot of ideas have already been explored. And just to go back
Mm-hmm.
to the same villains over and over again is boring.
Right. I agree. This is why I'm not as in love with the Daleks and Cybermen. I'm like, yeah, I get it. But Faye continues, so that's not to say that using this genre is just an excuse to write everything off as, well, it's magic. In folk stories surrounding supernatural spirits and fairies, there are often rules set up ahead of time that are important for besting the fairy spirit, such as winning a bet, dressing in a manner to trick a fairy, outsmarting the fairy in some way to break a contract, etc. But by telling the story from Ruby's perspective, RTD has kind of gotten away with using the idea of fairy magic for his folktale without setting any parameters. And since it's just a single episode of television, it pretty much works, in my opinion. See, I think, I'm interjecting as Elysia again, I think that just because parameters aren't explicitly stated or maybe not yet explicitly stated doesn't mean
Mm-hmm.
that they're not there, because we did get, for instance, this 73 yards parameter.
Right, right. I also got to say, I really love that we are going into like dark fairy stories
Mm-hmm.
because that's sort of what they were originally, right? And we had the Changeling last year that was really cool with a dark fairy story. You have this, and I got to say, the Tinkerbell PR firm is not doing very well for fairies these days.
I'll clap. I believe in fairies. No.
Sorry, are we gonna have who played her? Who played her in Hook?
Oh, was it Julia Roberts?
It was Julia Roberts. So we're gonna have Julia Roberts as Tinkerbell again. I always think that I believe in fairies, Peter.
Sure. Why not?
Bizarre casting.
It would be like Sydney Sweeney now.
Yes, yes. Oh my god. It's really, can I just take an aside? I love Hook. It's a great movie. But that was the weirdest casting for Tinkerbell I could possibly imagine.
It was an outside the box casting. I didn't mind it at the time, but yeah, if you think about it, like that's not who I would expect.
Right, exactly.
So Faye continues, there's plenty of lore about fairy circles specifically, although it's more common for that reference to mean a naturally occurring circle in the ground made of mushrooms or grass. This is what I know it to be. And the consequences for stepping in them. The consequences or curses range from being transported to the fairy realm, dying at a young age, becoming invisible. Yeah, so I did wonder if he was in the fairy realm. But anyway, becoming invisible, dancing to the point of death by exhaustion, which was a real thing actually that happened in history,
Mm.
or finding it impossible to leave or be found. In this episode, it seems like the curse is tied to Ruby's own fear/history of abandonment. Yeah, as you said, John. As the doctor is the first of many to abandon her, the question of where did the doctor go isn't really important because the curse is just that people abandon Ruby and where they go is inconsequential. But here's my question as Elysia. If Why is she cursed when he's the one who stepped in the circle?
Because she opened the
The
thing. She
notes.
deliberately, I would say,
Right.
she deliberately opened up the notes,
True, that is when he
disrespected them.
disappeared. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, good point. Good point. So Faye continues, the biggest clue about this episode is what Kate directly tells Ruby and us as the audience. When faced with something inexplicable, our brain makes up rules to try to explain it. I think this is where the political story comes in. Ruby assumes that stopping Gwilym is what she is supposed to do to resolve her situation, but she is really just making up the rules to the unexplained, as it ends up not having an effect at all, except perhaps changing that time loop to avoid nuclear war. Also, I have to mention that when listing her soldiers' defense methods, Kate specifically lists necklaces of silver and salt in case of witchcraft, which seems not only apt for this episode, but also for the idea that the 14th Doctor did indeed make some significant changes to reality when he sprinkled that salt in the ground at the edge of the universe. Yeah.
Yep. You get the sense that 14, when he did that, he had a bit of a Hagrid moment. I should not have said that. I should not have said that.
Well, yeah. I've seen a lot of people complain that the ending doesn't make sense or at best is confusing, and I think that's kind of the point this time. It doesn't need to be explained with logic because it's not a case of typical Doctor Who time travel. It's a case of Fey magic that makes the time loop possible. It seems that there's two options at the end, but both amount to the same thing. One, the old woman actually is Ruby. See The Haunting of Hill House from 2018 for a really similar example of this idea that is really well done. I second that. That's a good show.
Yep.
Or it's just that old Ruby has some kind of influence over the woman in her dying moments. It isn't really clear, and again, doesn't really need to be made clear, but it seems that in her final moments of life, which in this genre is typically seen as a moment of transition and therefore a time when interacting with the fairy world is easier or more likely, Ruby is able to impede the curse by inserting her own message of don't step and therefore break the fairy magic. Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, I like that a lot. I like that. Do you think that it was that she, doing a good thing sort of earned her the ability to intercede?
And what was the good thing was, but this was decades after she chases him away. So
Right. But then Faye brings up a good point of like, this is a transition
it's
period.
her. Yeah, that's what I took.
So it sort of unlocks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I like your interpretation where, the woman, whether it's Ruby or whatever there, that it wasn't meant to be used to specifically chase him away. But Ruby just kind of, I like the idea of her having the agency and cleverness to think like, well, I can use this curse in
Right.
this way.
I also like how she gets older by putting on glasses. That's like the way
and different
that
wigs.
they show she's
different
older.
wigs.
Yeah, different wigs.
But it worked for me. I was like, that's a bad wig, but I understand now time has passed and she's older. Yeah. So Faye concludes this kind of episode, which ends with almost no ending explanation, isn't unprecedented. See Midnight in Doctor Who. The difference here is that it's not meant to be explained as a mysterious alien life form, but as the stories of the supernatural and sometimes very creepy spirits of the Fae realm come to life in this episode. So I am frequently frustrated with RTD's propensity to skip explanations or not even attempt to address oblivious plot holes. She says, "Am I? Yes." But this time, RTD's style has serendipitously aligned with this episode's genre to create a creepy and interesting supernatural fairy folktale story. And it works because he specifically didn't set up any rules about how this magic works, allowing himself the freedom to do whatever he liked. If you made it to the end of this long email, thank you so much for reading. I really enjoy all the Lorehounds podcasts and look forward to your discussions and insight each week. Thank you, Faye. That was, a lot of, thank you for, laying out all of that folklore
Absolutely.
backgrounds. That's a really helpful framework through which to evaluate this episode.
Yeah, thanks, Faye, for writing in. It's nice to hear from you. Thanks for being a listener since Rings of Power. It's always great to hear that people are following us through our journey through time and space.
Mm-hmm.
Also, you brought up midnight. I just want to respond to that.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard a lot of talk about this being sort of close to midnight. I actually think this is more of a turn left. This is Donna.
Right.
You recall, if you've not watched this is an episode where Donna, a previous companion of the Doctor, dear listener, I know Elysia's watched it. I'm educating the listener who has not
Yeah,
watched
I know.
but this is an episode where Donna, a previous companion of the Doctor, gets like attacked by a time beetle. I forgot what they called it exactly, and sent back into her timeline so that she never meets the Doctor. And then the Doctor like fails because she wasn't there to help him, and it's a whole chain of events until she can kind of save herself, and then she can go back and stop this from happening.
Yeah. I mean, I think people say midnight because it's got that creepy vibe, but actually for me it was most like Blink, which is also an episode that the Doctor's barely in, where the Weeping Angels, which are some of my favorite Doctor Who villains or whatever you want to call them, antagonists. That's the episode they're introduced, and it's with Carey Mulligan of all people, young Carey Mulligan.
I know. And she had a great career after that.
Yeah. But that's a classic standalone episode, and that's what this reminded me of, because I was going to call them the Creeping Angels or the Weeping Angels, but it's a similar vibe. They just, it's as soon as you're not looking at them, they get closer.
Yeah, the Weeping Angels. I love the Weeping Angels, but I'm okay to not see them for a season or two,
right?
Because
no,
especially I think Chibnall really overused them.
Yeah, and it kind of took some of the creepy magic out of them for me. What was done with them in the whole Flux storyline, but that's just my issue with the Flux storyline.
Yep. All right, Marilyn Arbukila also wrote in and said, I've got a million questions about episode 5, but first and foremost, what in the world did old Ruby say to all those people to make them run away in terror, including Mad Jack himself?
Yeah, that's an excellent question.
We just don't know. I hope we find out by the end of the season.
Yeah,
I think that would be a nice bit. And also Marilyn took issue with the way they represented the Welsh. She says they're far more kind and welcoming to strangers than was depicted in the show. And then there was some debate between a few members of the Discord saying like, well, she did kind of be like, do you know what a phone is?
Yeah. I mean, I think also Davies he's actually, I think if I remember correctly, he's from Swansea, which is where my family was from too. It's the second largest city in Wales.
He's basically your cousin then.
Basically, that's how it works. Yeah.
You should write to him, get him to bring you on the show.
Exactly. I would like to be a Doctor Who villain, and then cut to me in 10 hours of makeup to become a Weeping Angel. But it's a city on the southern coast, and maybe that's more like city behavior actually than small town behavior.
Fair enough. All right. Well, thanks everyone for writing in. Of course, you can get in on that. TARDIS at thelorehounds.com. For now, we're ready to wrap this thing up. So we've got a Patreon and a Supercast. You can get early and ad-free access to all our podcasts there. You can get show guides for some of the shows that we're doing, like House of the Dragon. You can get a whole bunch of stuff. It's a great time. We do second breakfast. Elysia, you just had your first second breakfast. How was it?
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. And I'm looking forward to, we're going to talk about our movie this week too.
I know. 11Z's, a new offering.
11Z's with Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. It was really good to rewatch that movie.
It's a great movie. Absolutely. Absolutely great. Really early 2000s in vibe. Hope you enjoy it. You can also check out our affiliates. Radioactive Ramblings is on an off week, but they'll be back with more Fallout lore next week. Rings and Rituals has a new episode coming on episode 7 of the Rings of Power, where they're going to look at it through the lens of ritual. They're doing a full rewatch of season 1 so that you can be prepped for season 2. Wool Shift Dust. Elysia, tell me about Wool Shift Dust and the Star Wars canon timeline.
So Wool Shift Dust, two things. One, for the main timeline, we're going to be recording later this week because it's a busy week for the last 2 episodes of season 2 of Vegan 23. So you still have time to get in feedback if you have any about those last 2 episodes, and or anything else, of course. And for the book club, I'm releasing the long overdue Shift book breakdown. So it was a monster editing job, but it's coming out this week. And then for the Star Wars canon timeline, there's final 2 pre-Acolyte episodes. There's an episode where we break down season 1 of Young Jedi Adventures, where I talk to Bob again about the lore and everything and the story, and Hjalti, my professional animator friend, also as well.
Cool.
And then the last episode is a final preview of the Acolytes with, the characters and who might show up and things like that.
Nice. And then you and I will be on the Acolyte.
And then we're doing our weekly breakdowns. Yeah.
Is it next week or the week? It's the week after, right?
Yeah, June. They say June 4th it comes out, but I'm guessing that's only in the US. So yeah, June 4th, 5th.
All right. Sounds good. Looking forward to that season.
Or sorry, by US I mean the entire Americas, because it's
North America.
What also
South America too?
Same time zone.
Okay. Oh, right. I get you. All right. Properly Howard Movie Review is our last affiliate I want to talk about. They are finishing up their season on Felonies and Fugazis with Rocky. That should be out by the time that you listen to this episode. So go check them out. Check out all our affiliates, or head to our Discord server if you want to chat with us. Find everything in the link tree in the show notes below. We've got to do our thank yous. Elysia, you're on.
Okay. So thank you first to our Discord server boosters who, especially, Bob and I have been having to record through Discord because of a technical issue. So the boosting really helps us to be able to make better recordings. So thank you so much to Gnarls, Aaron K., Tiller the Thriller, Dork of Ninjas, Duve71, Captain Gingy 56, and then our lore masters who make all this possible. Samartian, Michael G, Michelle E, David W, Brian P, Nick W, SC, Peter OH, Bettina W, Adam S, Nancy M, Duve71, Brian 8063, Frederick H, Sarah L, Gareth C, Eric F, Matthew M, Sarah M, DJ Miwa, Andra B, Kwang Yu, Jedi Bob, Nathan T, Alex V, Aaron T, Sub-Zero, Aaron K, Dali V, Mothership 61, Gnarls. Or sorry,
hold on there.
I know that was a complete mispronunciation. Gnarls? And always last, Adrian.
Cool. Well, do you know what I forgot to talk about, Elysia?
What
we're doing on this feed?
Oh, yes.
On the Lorehounds feed, because now this is also on the Doctor Who Sonic Screwcast feed.
Right. Which with new episode art, new podcast art and everything.
Very exciting. And Aaron K., if you know him from the Discord, and the host of Radioactive Ramblings, did the art, and it's looking great.
And you can see the preview of my smug derpy cat avatar in the art.
I know. We got to get that finished up. So you're doing Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes?
Yes. So yes, Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes is also coming out in the next couple of days. Yeah.
Cool.
So it's not just Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. Actually, the first half is David and I talking about the original series, and then I'm joined by another guest to talk about the new films.
That's very cool. Mm-hmm. I'm liking it. We are also, of course, doing Doctor Who weekly. We're doing The Acolyte coming up weekly. We're doing House of the Dragon. Right now, we're finishing up our rewatch, doing the last 2 episodes this week, and then we will be doing a podcast with Maester Anthony from Electric Boogaloo and Properly Howard to talk about our hopes and dreams for season 2. Cool. What else we got? Lorehounds Play. I literally posted it to Patreon before we started recording on Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. And we've got 11sies coming up, which we already talked about. So thanks,
Busy
everyone.
Week. Yeah, thank you.
We're having a great time. We'll see you next week. The Lorehounds podcast is produced and published by The Lorehounds. You can send questions and feedback and voicemails at thelorehounds.com/contact. Get early and ad-free access to all Lorehounds podcasts at patreon.com/thelorehounds. Any opinions stated are ours personally and do not reflect the opinion of or belong to any employers or other entities. Thanks for listening.
A new Star Wars journey begins in the place all good journeys begin. At, well, the beginning. This Star Wars Day, I'm excited to introduce the new Star Wars Canon Timeline podcast, where we will piece together the complete story of that galaxy far, far away, in timeline order, from the dawn of the Jedi through the great unknown following the sequel trilogy. This is a podcast for both Star Wars superfans and complete newbies. Listen to the short intro episode now to hear how it works and what to expect over the coming weeks as we set the stage for the new television series The Acolyte, which we will be covering with weekly breakdowns. Subscribe to the Star Wars Canon Timeline podcast wherever you listen to take part in one of the most epic and expansive stories ever told, following all the twists and turns from start to finish. May the 4th be with you all month and beyond.